Speaking Human.
Today on Speaking Human, we marvel at the magnificent Marvel marketing machine by thoroughly examining Thor's new anatomy, gauging audience expectations for Guardians of the Galaxy, and getting amped up early for the ultimate superhero sequel, Avengers Assemble!
Speaking Human.
Welcome to Speaking Human, the official podcast of Monsters Unlimited, a creative agency with a business brain. I'm Shag Conley, Communications Director at Monsters.
And I'm Patrick Jebber, the Creative Director at Monsters Unlimited, with a superhuman ability to jump 1.5 inches higher than everyone else.
1.5 inches? That's
yes,
amazing.
It's pretty high.
Pretty high indeed. This is your first time checking out the podcast. Our goal on Speaking Human is to simplify complex marketing topics. We toss aside all the buzzwords and mumbo jumbo and focus on what you really want to know. And that's how marketing can bring brands and people together. On today's episode, we're strapping on our Iron Man suits to explore the vast, interconnected marketing efforts of the Marvel Universe. So let's get into it.
It's a huge day in the Marvel Universe right now because Thor, the god of thunder, he messed up. He is no longer worthy to hold that damn hammer of his. Aww. And for the first time in history, that hammer is being held by a woman. That's right.
So what you just heard there was an audio clip from Patrick's favorite show, The View, where Whoopi Goldberg announced the big change coming to Marvel Comics, and that is a female Thor. So we're going to talk about that and some other things Marvel's doing with their huge marketing universe. But first, why don't you give us a little background on the Marvel brand, Patrick? Just some basic info for the folks out there.
You might have heard of this company called Marvel Entertainment, LLC.
A small little brand.
Yeah. They were purchased by the Walt Disney Company in 2009 for a small chunk of change, $4 billion. Again, that's pretty small in today's comparison, with the social acquisition of companies and so on and so forth and so on. Their pitch line is that they're one of the world's most prominent character-based entertainment companies. And they have a proven library of more than 8,000 characters for over 70 years. Although I have read that they have over 35,000 characters, but I don't know which one's accurate because everyone says something different. But what characters are we talking about, people? Come on. Wolverine, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Captain America, the X-Men, the Avengers, who are the culmination of all of those characters. The Guardians of the Galaxy, which we're talking about. Maybe even a little Victor Von Doom, which I just like saying, so that's why I included him.
I don't even know who that is. But a lot of people whose names end in man.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Victor Von Doom is actually the villain of the Fantastic Four. And you might have remembered that really horrible couple of movies that they released years back with Jessica Alba and who is now Captain America.
Oh yeah, the Human Torch.
Yeah. Let me just say this. There are so many characters that they have a database that has them listed under subcategories. And let me just tell you. You could search for these characters by power, by nationality, by species, by occupation. And the one
this
I was
is on the Marvel website. You can do this.
This is like a wiki that they made. It's a database. It's called the Marvel database. The one that I was really surprised to see was you could sort by their sexual preference. What?
Oh,
who searches for that? Who?
It's the internet. Somebody's searching it.
Anyway, so that's a little bit on Marvel. And if you haven't heard of them, you've been living under a rock, of course.
It is pretty interesting from what you say there that they refer to themselves as a character-based entertainment company, which is fitting, but it's like they made up their own category because they have just so many well-known characters, I guess, across media,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're entertainment-based, but they're all based on these characters from comic books,
Yeah, which is, kind of a good starting point. So what's your What's your personal experience with Marvel? What's your kind of history? Are you a comic book fan? Just the movies? How do you know Marvel?
When I was a kid, I actually wasn't a huge comic book nerd. I did like Wolverine and Spider-Man when I was little. I thought those two characters were pretty cool, and they were big enough that you knew who they were back then. I think my first comic book was a Wolverine issue, and as Marvel's grown, I've definitely loved the direction they've taken with the movies. Some have flunked, in my opinion, but I think that's normal, especially when you're talking about such a wide range of characters and over multiple years, maybe decades. The interest has grown, so the original movies weren't all that great, I don't think, except for the original Spider-Man trilogy. I thought was very good.
Yeah, and that's probably, I was never really into comic books, so I didn't have a whole lot of familiarity with the comics. I do remember I think it was in the 90s, like Stan Lee kind of became a pop culture figure. He was appearing in movies and popping up on TV shows and stuff, so I was kind of familiar with Marvel through him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's mostly through the movies, and Spider-Man's I feel like the first big comic book movie from Marvel that I remember where I got into him. And I wouldn't say I thought the original trilogy was good. I thought the first two Spider-Mans were excellent. That Spider-Man 3 was one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think you'll find a lot of people that have very strong either likes or dislikes of some of those movies for sure.
Yeah, and I mean across the universe, but it is the way they've done it, especially in recent years, the way they've tied it all together, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, that they've done that with their marketing too, just kind of taking these different movies, different comics, different things they have going on and kind of woven them all together to form a whole brand, a character-based entertainment company is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's something that maybe 20 years ago, I think people would have been surprised to see happen so successfully.
Yeah, I think even now they're surprised because it's a pretty complex undertaking. So let's talk about the announcement that came out recently. When we're recording this podcast, it happened about a week ago. They announced, on The View, you heard that Whoopi Goldberg clip, there's going to be a female Thor. So what do you make of this announcement, Patrick, both as in terms of content and marketing?
I'll be honest, I was surprised by the announcement. I have a buddy who knows everything about everything when it comes to comics. Me, not so much. But I thought the male Thor was doing pretty well at the box office, so that's why it surprises me that they would just up and change the sex of the character.
Gender,
yeah,
change the parts.
Yeah.
Well, it is a change to the comic, so I don't know if that'll be a change to the movie or change that Thor character from the movies in the Avengers and the Thor movies now or down the line or anything, but right now it's just mostly, I think, a comic focus thing.
I don't know if everyone is on board with the decision, especially the diehard comic fans, but I think it's smart to create a female superhero that's very strong. There are so many characters in that Marvel universe. For some reason, the female characters never get top billing. You know what I mean?
No, it's true.
So I think that's kind of genius. And if not for the sheer increase in exposure, so the marketing angle, at least then to give, girls a hero to look up to that's not a man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that's a good thing to have. And there have been, some strong female characters in comics and the likes before, just, far and away not even close to as many. This announcement, I think, is such an amazing marketing tactic, especially timed, right before your release of Guardians in the Galaxy, which we'll talk about in a minute here. But it's such an amazing announcement because it's a non-story that they turned into a complete story. Mm-hmm. And when I first heard this, I'm like, wow, that's a big deal. That's big news. What is going to happen? Is Thor going to go to a doctor and have an operation? I thought it was a big deal, and the media picked it up like that and gave it that kind of feminist slant. Talking for this podcast, I did a little research, and I'm looking into it. And so within the comic, it turns out whoever grabs Thor's hammer, who is deemed worthy, right, becomes a god. So in the past, in the comic, they've had other people grab the hammer and sort of become Thor, which includes an alien and a frog. Right?
Yeah.
So this has happened in the past. They have become Thor. So basically, you had an alien and frog do it. Nobody's talked about that. And then you have a female. They kind of make it into a story. But it's just, it's kind of just a comic book storyline that'll probably go for a while, then play out, and it'll go back to the regular Thor.
Mm-hmm.
But they've turned it into, the media's picked it up and the balls got rolling, and it's turned into such a thing. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, well, and it says a lot about, how the mainstream media and the general public has jumped on board to the comic book characters and franchise, because, I really think 20 years ago, if you'd have said that, or 15 or maybe 10 years ago, people would have been like, Thor who? I don't even know who Thor is, even before the Thor movies came out. You know what I mean? And now people are actually talking about a female Thor. Nobody would have given, a rat's ass about it a while back. So
yeah, no, absolutely. It's a good move by Marvel, and it plays into their strategy, as I said, on the heels that they have this kind of new movie coming out. And so let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about the marketing for the upcoming Marvel movie, Guardians of the Galaxy. What do you think about what they're doing to sort of promote this movie?
When the first trailers came out, I don't think I was too excited about it. Who knows? It might surprise us. But, nobody cared a lick about Iron Man before the movie came out in 2008. You know what I mean? Robert Downey Jr. made that character likable, and suddenly it was one of the most popular superhero characters / franchises ever. So what they've done here is they're using a lot of humor and comedy, I think, to portray these characters, which is what I think people like about the movies in general. Iron Man has this wit. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's a huge part of Iron Man.
But that's what I think they're doing really well with the Guardians of the Galaxy. But again, I don't think anybody knows who they are, so it's just going to be one of those things people will go to see the movie because of the history of Marvel, and hopefully it lives up.
Yeah, I think it's riding a lot on that. I'm not sold on the success of this one.
Yeah.
It's interesting you bring up Iron Man, because that's, I hadn't thought of that. But when I first saw previews for Iron Man before it came out in the summer. I think I saw they played commercials during the Super Bowl that year or something. I was like, man, this movie looks awful. It looks like all CGI. Robert Downey Jr., why would they pick him? And all those kind of things that I thought would be bad. It turned out to be an excellent movie, and now it's obviously a huge franchise. But that's a good comparison. But I look at Guardians of the Galaxy, and I just don't feel, I see their marketing, and I don't feel like you have an idea what this is really about. There's kind of like a guy who looks like a tree and a raccoon, and this is like a big budget movie they're trying to sell to mainstream audiences, and it seems a little more niche. I don't know that it's going to find that big audience, so. And I don't know that the marketing's necessarily giving you, the uninformed, because most people don't know these characters, even a sense what it's about.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, with all of the other comic book stories, or a lot of them, they're all based on Earth and sort of set in our own reality. And so there's this connection I think people feel when they're set in outer space. I think you lose some people. You're gonna.
Good point.
You know what I mean? You're gonna lose all but maybe the diehards, and then the people who just want to go for. Hopefully it's a good entertaining movie, and there's nothing really competing against it in the box office. So I'm gonna go, kind of thing.
Yeah. And I'm sure it'll get, I'm sure it'll make some money. I don't know if it's going to be as big as the other Marvel movies. I will say it looks more interesting to me than most superhero movies, just because it looks pretty bizarre.
It is.
And also seems like it has a lot of odd comedy in it.
Yeah, a raccoon that's amazing. Who would ever? I don't even know.
There's a guy who's like a tree who has the voice of Vin Diesel, so that alone, I'm sold.
Yeah.
Moving from that franchise to another one, Marvel also started promoting the Avengers movie, which comes out next summer. Sure to be the biggest movie this summer. They had a cover of Entertainment Weekly, and they started kind of releasing some images of the bad guys. So what do you think about, the early marketing for the Avengers Age of Ultron?
Marvel has a plan, and that's what I like about them. They have been planning each and every step of this comic book movie ride we've been on for at least the last decade, maybe more.
Scary.
Yeah, I thought so. Think about how they planned that introduction of the core superhero team. Like, they went with Iron Man, and then went Captain America, and then Thor, and they released those movies very strategic, because then once the public was used to these characters and they really liked them, bam, they unite them all in the Avengers. You know what I mean? So they're very smart about how they position the movies. You talked about the villain, the focused marketing efforts, I think are right on, because I think about it this way. Villains are the most difficult part of the fantasy story. They have to.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, they have to feel real, and the best villains aren't black and white. They have good and bad parts to them that drive that mischievous evil doing. And right now, it's hard for people to fathom a bigger and badder villain in the Avengers universe. The last one came from outer space. It was going to destroy Earth, and what can live up to that?
No, definitely. I think what they do, and you're right, man, it's such a elaborate strategy. Like you think of all the balls they're kind of juggling in the air at the same time. They're not even balls, they're like onions, because then they're like slowly peeling back layers on each of them. They're kind of giving you, with each movie, a little bit of information in advance, to sell you on it.
I love that. Onion juggling? That is the best. Oh, I love that.
You can learn more at my new website, onionjuggler.com. So yeah, it's all such a woven together strategy, and this is just part of it. It's like, hey, Guardians of the Galaxy is coming out. Hey, let's announce this female Thor. Hey, let's throw out our first images of Age of Ultron. It's promoting. It's like a machine that like you keep feeding and it keeps making itself bigger. It's just pretty amazing. And I do agree with you. The villain. It's key to show the villain, because people already know these characters. So you have to say, okay, well, what are we getting that's different now? What are you going to give us new? How are you going to take this to another level? And that it kind of does all start with the villain. And I didn't love the villain in the first Avengers.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't really love the villain either in that. But it was, It worked enough. I just didn't think it was like an all-time great villain. And I don't know if this one will be either, but it's interesting. Anyway, to wrap up here, to take all these things, because we're talking about a lot of different kind of aspects or different things going on with Marvel, and this is just one summer. This is all the kind of things they're balancing at one time. What's the takeaway for businesses and brands out there, Patrick? Here's the thing. It comes back to my previous comment about Marvel and their planning. Each step of the way, they've given fans this universe that expands beyond the big screen. The TV show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. intertwined with Captain America movie is a great example. And one fed off and relied on what happened in the other. So what brands can learn from this is it's a lot like any business, It's that strategy. That's probably my main takeaway.
Yeah, and mine's kind of on the same lines. You mentioned the word strategy. I think that's key, because strategy involves a lot of timing, and that's what they do. So you're looking at your efforts from a year out, all the different kind of marketing things you're going to do, events, ads, websites, any kind of plans you have. You sit there and you lay that out and you say, all right, we're going to do this, and then you kind of try to tie those things together. How can we use this to cross-promote this? It's kind of a second level. Like I talked about my onion juggling. That's what you don't need to do it on quite the Marvel level, because most probably can't. But, most of us don't have the resources to do that. But you can sit down with your key people and look at that and say, all right, we're planning on doing these 5 things this year. How can we lay them out, time them, and position them to feed into each other and, make what is an individual effort into a bigger, larger effort? And that's kind of what strategy is all about. And you need it. You benefit from it.
Strategy. It's crucial to any plan.
Strategy. It can make it big, like the Avengers. The Avengers is a prime example of, you're talking about a movie that made over $1 billion worldwide, and it was all because of what built up to it. It was bigger than the sum of its parts.
Comic books. Who would have thought?
I know.
So that's it, huh?
Yeah. I think that's the end. What do you think?
I think we can end it.
You gotta end sometime.
Okay, that's it for today's show. You can find current and past episodes of the podcast at speakinghuman.com. You can also subscribe to the Speaking Human podcast in the iTunes store.
Email us with your comments, questions, statements, declarations, whatever. Feedback at speakinghuman.com. That's feedback at speakinghuman.com. Who knows? We might even read your email on the air. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Speaking Human. Catch you then, humans.
Speaking Human.